Thank you. How about those awesome presentations? Kill Spencer, Linda. Um, yeah, I'm very, I think a bit self-conscious about this presentation because usually I'm being attacked for having any sort of commercial aspect to what I do. So here, this is it's kind of the emphasis, but I think what's interesting about my evolution is that I went to the Rhode Island School of Design and started. I studied illustration. I started this sticker campaign, which was a hobby, but it really the Andre the Giant has a posse. Um, does this look like you're going to make a career out of it? Um, my roommate obviously didn't think so. He left a note on the back of the original sticker saying he swiped some enchiladas from work and I could grab some. You couldn't that, like that couldn't be in a Linklater script any better. But anyway, all I knew was that I enjoyed art, and it was the only thing I could think that I would be willing to do for a career. I was telling everybody else what I'd be willing to do. I think I was a bit naive, but anyway, I made this sticker the summer after my freshman year at RISD when I was working at a skate shop, and gave it to some friends, and thought it would be a 2-week inside joke. I was trying to teach a friend how to make a stencil. Sort of caught on in a subcultural way with skateboarders and punk rockers, and the next thing you know, there was an article in the local indie paper saying, what's this sticker campaign about? And I was having fun just being mischievous, and I thought, this thing is, it's actually affecting people. Maybe I should do some research on some of the psychological phenomena behind this. And I studied Heidegger's theory of phenomenology, the idea that people have become numb to their surroundings and they need unique experiences to reawaken a sense of wonder. I also was a big fan of the Sex Pistols, who were in their graphic artist Jamie Reed, who has a show at our gallery right now. He did God Save the Queen, all that stuff. He and Malcolm McLaren were into the situationists, the idea, once again, that people are sort of living life in a trance and they need a jarring spectacle to make them consider their surroundings and analyze their surroundings. So who knew that would come from this? I changed around the mayor's billboard, and that took the campaign billboard, and that took the campaign from 2.5-inch stickers to media speculation about how this should be interpreted. This is a very colorful mayor who'd beat some people up, so a lot was read into it, and that made me think about the Rorschach test aspect of putting something in public space that there's not an obvious explanation for. But the idea that getting my work out there in public was extremely important to find an audience, and I was very intimidated by the idea of taking slides to newspapers and magazines, getting illustration jobs, or to go to a gallery and say, "Would you give me a show?" So I became really interested in silk screening. I was making a lot of my my stickers were made with screen printing, and I was started to make posters screen printing. I was doing a lot of photography, but I didn't like the surface of photo paper, so I decided I would manipulate my photos through screen printing, and it became the medium that I fell in love with, because you didn't have to have one precious original; you could make multiples. And I would go to the RISD student sales, and I would sell some of the prints, give some of the prints away, and then put some up on the street. So from the beginning, there was this idea of the inside-outside strategy of how am I going to finance my street art. And I was really inspired by a few people. This is a film called They Live by John Carpenter, which if we had more time, I would go into the premise of it. It's pretty interesting, but it's sort of Orwellian. This is Barbara Kruger's work, who she, really got going strong in the 80s, doing a lot of work that was using sort of an advertising formula, but for political purposes and fine art purposes. And she had a history in magazine design, but her work is really strong. The way she would use images with presented in a way that gave them new meaning, with new type that gave them a message that wasn't necessarily intended with the original image. Then Robbie Canal. I saw Robbie Canal's work. He's from here. From LA, and in 1987 I saw this contradiction poster when I was a senior in high school and thought, politics, art, humor all together, I want to do that. So then I decided, well, this Andre thing is really sort of silly. I want to go in a direction that's more like propaganda, because I considered advertising to be the most pervasive form of propaganda in the United States that people didn't question enough. Ironically, I would later go into business as an advertising person doing graphic design for campaigns. I literally did work for Sprite and then at night changed their billboards around. So let's see, do we have one of those here? No, but anyway, to get back to the idea of, of spreading my work and creating an audience for what I was doing. And if you looked at it cynically, you could just call it a really, really long lead teaser campaign for the big commercial cash-in that would come later. But really, it was about getting people to question everything they're inundated with. Yeah, and then my work started to become, as it took on a more propaganda approach, it started to become a little bit more political. Now, the entire time that I was working, I was always thinking, I want to make what I want to make, and I have to figure out how to make it work as a business, how to make it work financially. So after getting out of the Rhode Island School of Design, I decided I loved screen printing. I'm going to start a screen printing business. All these bands want me to print their shirts and design stuff for them. And and I'll do a studio, and it'll be just like Warhol's factory, and the Velvet Underground will come hang out, and it'll be awesome. And it didn't quite work out that way. My screen printing business, I did have a skateboard ramp in there, which was great, and it was a lot messier than Spencer's studio, but similar setup. But my business really failed, and so the idea that I had to use screen printing equipment to make my own work and to do contract work for other people just did not work out. And so I was desperate. I sold my business, and a friend of mine in San Diego that had a clothing company said, "You can do production for me, and you can help me design stuff, and then you can do your own stuff, if it fits in time-wise." And so I did that, and he knew how to use the computer. So I started to learn how to use the computer, and people were asking us, "Hey, can you do some graphic design for us? We like what you do for yourself." So really, I've been very fortunate in that the stuff I put out on the street, even though it wasn't intended to be marketing for work that I could do for other people, it ended up working that way, and it helped me to survive financially. The other thing that came out of it was, I had been making some of my own T-shirts to sell, but this guy actually had a functioning clothing company. It's Andy Howell, who had started New Deal Skateboards in Element, which is one of the biggest skateboard brands now, and he had a line called Sophisto, and so I was helping him with Sophisto. But meanwhile, I was making posters of things that I cared about, and criticizing capitalism while selling stuff to people, and scrutinizing capitalism is the less hypocritical way of putting it. That's how I think it should work. A lot of my, it was interesting to hear Spencer talk about, sort of, what things mean in terms of representations of America. I think that the flag's been sort of hijacked by the right. Did some pieces that tried to incorporate a more generous interpretation of what the flag could mean, which would be inclusive of a lot of different people and things. But anyway, what I learned from Andy Howell was how to do graphic design, and I learned how to use the computer, and I became commercially viable. He and another friend and I started a company called FBI, the First Bureau of Imagery. Then Then Andy decided he didn't want to do that. We changed the name of the company to Black Market. It was in the late 90s, and it was when, Mountain Dew was starting to sponsor the X Games, and action sports was seen as more commercially viable. And all the work we'd been doing was in the action sports space because we were skateboarders. So all of a sudden, Netscape and Mountain Dew and Levi's and all sorts of people and a lot of record labels, I love music, were hiring us to do stuff. And I didn't put a single piece of commercial. Well, no, I'd have a commercial piece in here, but most of the work that I was doing, that I was sharing with the public, in a really big way was huge murals, canvases, posters. Meanwhile, while I was paying the bills with graphic design, I was going out and putting my stuff up. And eventually, a company said, "Hey, we really like your designs, and we'd like to license them for a clothing line. We understand that you're an artist, so we want to do it in a way that's really beneficial to." Not detrimental to your art career. We like what you do. We respect it, and it's not going to be Ed Hardy. So, I mean, this is pre Ed Hardy, but I think they said Jinko or Fubu or something. But anyway, who are they? Can you even remember them? But anyway, what I feel like I was able to do, which I'm very lucky to have been able to do this and continue to be able to do it, is make things that shared ideas that I believe in, and then find the different platforms to apply them to. So clothing, album packaging, my own stickers, posters, fine art, street art installations. I've done what I believed in, and then the opportunities have come because people liked the work. So even with the political stuff that I do, a lot of times, people would say, "Oh, you're not gonna get, your clothing line won't do well if it's perceived as political. Stores won't carry it because they get, Republicans walk through the door and they're not gonna like it, And I just said, well, okay, that's fine. And but then they'd try, and then they go, "Oh, well, yeah, but kids like this one design, so we'll try it out." And then next thing you know, it's doing well. And I think if you just stick with what you believe in, it'll work out. Yes. Have I worn out my welcome? These are other things. What I engage in with my poster practice is what I'd call, hopefully, this is not a mischaracterization. Socially conscious capitalism. I make a print. A lot of times, if it's dealing with a cause, I'm using the profit that's built into that print to donate money to the cause, to raise awareness about the cause, to encourage people to go and support the cause in whatever way they can, and still make enough money for me to sustain my business. I guess things like Newman's Own work that way. Of course, Paul Newman had the luxury of being charitable because he's always already crazy paid for movies. So, a lot of people, I think, don't think that that's even possible, or they're just greedy. And, I think that's one of the reasons I support Occupy. And I support education. But a lot of this work, I've made as posters and sold it and put it up on the streets. This is a I'm shirt about a graphic that I also made a T-shirt of, that on the left, that's about after the bailout, since the bailout didn't come with any sort of strict conditions, how the banks in Wall Street went right back to the same very hazardous practices. This is from a series that I call Two Sides of Capitalism, and I think this is very relevant to this talk. I mean, I'm lucky that in my business I have Studio Number One, which is a design firm. I have Subliminal Projects, which is our gallery. I have Obey Giant Art, which is my posters and fine art, and then Obey Clothing, which is a licensing deal, but I'm the creative director of Obey Clothing. Each one of those things employs awesome people. People that some came from ArtCenter, actually. There's a couple from Otis too, and they're good also. But anyway, I feel like it's somewhat of a utopian scenario to get to make a living as a creative and hire other creative people who have aspirations to make art and do things in their free time. And one of the reasons people say to me, like, if you were a real street artist, if you were keeping it mad real, you would just work as a waiter or something and like screw all that capitalist bullshit, And I go, a lot of the stuff that I do well because I honed my skills working professionally under deadlines, solving problems, and doing things where I would learn techniques and come up with ideas that if I didn't do it for the client, I'd actually save it for myself. and or frequently say that could have worked really well for the client, but screw them, they're not getting it, and do it for myself. So this is about what I call the good side of capitalism, the idea of self-determination and being resourceful. Freedom of the press is guaranteed to those who own one. It ties right back into Spencer saying he didn't like the way stuff was being made. He made it himself. I, didn't own a magazine. I did later, but swindle. It went out of business. But, didn't own, any sort of, I was powerless, relatively speaking, so I decided to empower myself. This is the bad side of capitalism, when you accumulate wealth and you leverage that to oppress others, to just accumulate more for yourself, and you're not compassionate, you're not empathetic, you're not looking at the collective need, you're not a good citizen. This is about first of all, my love of Ed Ruscha and his Standard Station piece, but second of all, about our addiction to fossil fuels. And so human rights is a big part of what I do. And even our design studio number one, we take on a lot of projects that are motivated by the merits, the social merits of the project. So a lot of times we do stuff cheap or free for things that we believe in, for Haiti, for Darfur, etc. Anywhere that needs us. I'm trying to save several continents here. So by the way, if anybody saw the Coney video, that wasn't authorized by me. But I mean, I do think that the idea of encouraging, activism through social media is great. I just don't think that that charity is, dotted its I's and crossed its T's completely. This healthcare reform, war, all the usual topics. Stuff I did. I was actually hired by the Sierra Club to do this for very, very little money. But at the time, it was, something I believed in, and the very little money I was able to make was good for me. I needed it. This is the thing that most people know me for. A lot of people know me for, and I really believed that Obama would be a transformative figure, and I made no money from this project. I got sued for a lot of money, but I made no money. I believe everybody's got to make a living as an artist, but or whatever they do. But the idea that your need to make money and your need to be a good human being are mutually exclusive just isn't true. So. These are pieces that I did that actually prior to Occupy, but that were about themes that tie into Occupy. I'm always ahead of the curve. So, but then I found out from the guy that masterminded Occupy that he'd been working on it for 4 years. So then I was like, oh no, I was behind. But anyway, I used my wife as a model. That's her on the right, and some images, some other paintings. But I make prints of all these. So here's commercial stuff and non-commercial stuff. The cool thing is, a lot of people are saying, you're doing this stuff for Occupy. Anybody that feels guilty about being a capitalist is not going to want to work with you. Well, then I get the call from Time Magazine saying, we really like that you've been doing all this stuff for Occupy. Will you do a cover for us? And and it was about the protester, but as being the person of the year for 2011, because it was a global phenomenon. Greece, all the UK, Arab Spring, Occupy. But I felt like to make a compelling image that I knew was somebody from the Occupy movement was a great opportunity for me as an artist to get attention for the movement, not to mention that Time Magazine is capable of getting a bit of attention on their own. So, that was cool. But then, simultaneously, I was making an image that subverted my own Obama image, and I could not sell anything with that. I love it when art and commerce work together, and they often can. But the crazy thing about this was that Universal or Warner Brothers, I forget which one it was, but I have so much respect for corporations, but somehow can't remember which one it was right now. they own the mask design for V for Vendetta, and even though it had been appropriated by Anonymous and the 99% movement and Occupy, and it was probably just as well known in association with that as with the movie, when I asked if I could license that mask for a piece of art, which I just ordered the mask, photographed one of my employees wearing it, just pretend you're Obama, look up, look to the future, look hopeful, and yeah, no problem. And and made that, but then I just gave the they wouldn't license it because they refused to license it for anything other than something associated with the movie. And so that was a little bit annoying. But overall, I'm incredibly lucky that there's one of the Sprite hijack that used to say "Obey your thirst." And that Bank Gothic was a typeface I might use anyway. So it's like I just went up there and measured it and was like, okay, headed to Kinko's to make some of those, and can of flat black and a poster, and that Sprite billboard became my billboard very quickly. Luckily they never went after me. They were actually really cool. They knew about it, and I thought I was so slick. I forgot the internet had been invented for a while, and I was easy to find. This is a big piece in New York. I still do a lot of street art. That balance of the indoor-outdoor strategy, art, and commerce is something I'm always striving for. And this is just more street art stuff. I think a little bit more. Yeah, Houston and Bowery in New York. And I get attacked all the time. That mural was totally defaced by real graffiti people. I'm not a real graffiti person, despite my 16 arrests. I don't know. It seems pretty real to me, but when I'm locked up. But anyway. That's okay. Anyway, I think I got to wrap this up. This is my biggest piece. It's on the side of the parking garage for the West Hollywood Library, and that was facilitated by both the city of West Hollywood and MoCA. Two people I thought would never be interested in anything I was doing, and it really all came from me just hustling to put my stuff out there through not such orthodox channels and methods. Oh, and by the way, I've got those Occupy Hope stickers of the Guy Fawkes mask. I have a bunch of those here with me, so hit me up if you want some afterward. And that is that. Thank you.